Here in my hand I'm holding stories of days of old, keepsakes of memory. No one knows what they mean.
I'm Gregor Metamorphic. I am a trans man and a drag queen, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the character of Lucy in Bram Stoker's Dracula. This isn't going to be a long video, it's just an observation, and one that's really important, I believe. So in the book, we see that Lucy is a fully fleshed out character. She is kind to animals, she has a good loving heart, she's sex positive, she is a wonderful friend to Mina, and she is a wonderful caring daughter to her mother, and she's just a really good, kind person. And that's why it stings so hard, part of the reason why it stings so hard to see her become a victim of Dracula. And we really get an idea for her personality. She's written in such a way that you really understand who she is. But in the movies and in the TV series, we don't get a picture of Lucy at all. All that we get is someone that's there to exist just to prop up the men. Basically, we get an over-sexualized, empty character, really. We don't really get to understand who she is, or her motivations, or her personality, or any of the wonderful things about her from the book. And I feel this is because, as men, we tend to hold women in movies and media, and a lot of times their own personal relationships, as they're existing for us, rather than they're existing for themselves, and they have their own lives to live, apart from men. A lot of times in these movies, we see the reflection of that being portrayed through fantasy. We see a fantasy of that. And that's what happened to Lucy. I love the classic Dracula movies, but I haven't seen any of the classic ones that really flesh out that character. And I'm reading Bram Stoker's Dracula, and just every time it mentions her, it comes up, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, she is a very important character. She has a personality, she has passion, and she has motivation, inspiration. She's a wonderful friend, and she is a good, kind person. And that is completely apart from any purpose that she might serve for a man. And that is because we men need to understand women do not exist for us. They don't. Lucy does not exist to be simply the victim of the seduction of Count Dracula. She exists as her own person. She cares deeply about her fiancé, but she's also has her own personality, her own style, her own motivations, her own friendships, her own loves. She's a very kind person. We don't see that in the movies because we have a problem just allowing women to be their own person. And it's okay. We can step back. We need to step back as men and realize that women do not exist for us. They exist for themselves. They have relationships with us. We have interactions with women. They do not exist to give us pleasure. And when we paint them that way in the movies, I mean, it's been a long time since the classics, but we still paint this character this way. And when we paint them that way, we deny them their truth. We deny them their own life. And we basically just drop them in there to exist for us men. And they don't. Women are their own person. I like to see a version of Dracula where Lucy gets fully fleshed out as a character, just like she is in the book, where she gets her own personality, her own story, where she doesn't exist for Dracula. She doesn't exist for Arthur. She exists because she exists for herself. And she's kind and loving and selfless, but she still has her own life. She still has her own style, her own passions, her own drive, her own motivations. She does not exist for the men in the story. And I think it's very, very important to point that out, because as much as I enjoy those movies, and I love those classic movies, we also need to understand how some things we love have some problematic issues. And that is one of those issues that we really need to move away from. We can enjoy the classics. We can enjoy it. But with a healthy understanding that women in these stories should not and do not exist for men. They have their own story. They have their own character to tell. And we realize that, and we just understand that they exist apart from us men, then we don't deny them that freedom. We don't deny them the just basic rights of existing as themselves. Me and my partner were watching this TV series. I'm not going to say what the name of it here is, but you probably know it's a lot of royalty and fantasy and such. And there's this character that gets beaten by this horrible teenage king. And when she does, I didn't even realize till I looked up, because I was concerned about this character. It just drops off after that. She never comes back. She never shows up again. And so I look her up. She has no name. Her character has no name. And her character does not have an ending. She does not have anywhere where she picks back up in the story. And that's because she existed to be his victim. She didn't exist for herself. She was written to develop his story. And we need to move away from that. We need to move away from stealing women's stories. It's really, really important that we move away from that. We progress away from that. That whenever we are trying to create film, we're trying to create art, that we do not deny women their stories. Please, men, let's understand that we have no right to steal women's stories. Lucy in Bram Stoker's Dracula deserves her own story, which she got in the book. I highly recommend reading the original and seeing what an amazing character she is, and how deeply she loves Mina and Arthur, and her connections to animals, and just the world around her is just beautiful. It just gives you chills to read it, because every character that I've seen portrayed of her in the films is just empty. Like she's just a vessel to be filled with someone else's story, so she can just exist to be a prop. And she's more than that. So I would highly recommend reading the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, tuning in whenever I read it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because it's amazing. She is a wonderful character that deserves more respect. Thank you so much for watching.
Here in my hand I'm holding stories of days of old, keepsakes of memory no one knows.